I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
WAK.
If Amtgard Knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on a
Nice.
freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Kingdom of Winter's Edge, interview the Amtgard community at large, and talk with interesting people from around the foam-fighting world. This week we are talking to Sword Knight Sir Dalos from the Kingdom of Wetlands? Dragonspine.
Celestial Kingdom.
Man, I was just going to run through all of them until I got it. Dalos, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so I'm from West March, technically, from the Principality of the Golden City, which is geographically located inside of the Celestial Kingdom, but we are not members of the Celestial Kingdom, and by we, there's like just a few members of the Golden City now, but technically it's a West March Principality. We're like a very small principality, kind of as a joke thing, but all our paperwork is in order and official. So, you know, that is a thing.
So
Yeah.
I'm assuming the Golden City bit ties into the Golden City All-Stars. Is that relevant?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. We, Arthon was originally Arthon of the Golden City. And at some point, I changed my name to Dalos of the Golden City to make fun of him. And then we actually formed the Golden City All-Stars at HFS's big event called Combine Realms War years and years ago. You had to have teams, and we wanted to have our own team. So we had a 3-person team. Actually, you guys' first night, my Squire Lorik was the other founding member of the Golden City All-Stars, and we formed it at that Combine Realms War. And we said, oh, our team name is the Golden City All-Stars, and then it kind of blew up from there and became a thing. So
Okay.
I remember Lorik saying
went
that
into story time early.
Oh, no, it's totally fine.
I remember Lorik saying that to make a kingdom in high fantasy society, you just needed 3 guys in a bathtub.
Yeah.
So how
It's not far from true.
So we heard a little bit about how you got started when Lorik told us how he got started, but we always like to ask and get your perspective on it. How did you first get into Amtgard, or if Amtgard wasn't your first Boffers style game, how did you get into Boffers, and then how did that transition into Amtgard?
So I was 13 and I was dating this young lady whose name I don't remember, and her older brother was her guardian, and his name I do remember. His name was Otis, and he said, I think you'd be interested in this game that I play, and it's called Amtgard. This was before there was any split, before HFS split from Amtgard. So the park here in Austin was huge. It was, 50 to 60 people plus back in those times.
Wow.
And we'd even have 100 people regular park days at times back in the day. But he took me out, and he promptly quit like 2 or 3 weeks after he took me out. But after I had found it, then I made some friends there and started kind of going on the regular with them. And Anthony and I were friends before, Lorik. He and I were friends before we played Amtgard. And so him and another one of our friends from junior high started going with us as well at that time. So he started like a week or 2 after me at most, as well as another friend that we played D&D with back in those days. So, typical story, I think. Boy meets girl, girl's brother shows boy how to swing foam. And then 31 years later, or 32 years later, here we are. Is that typical? I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems almost like a ploy, like, well, if I can get you really into this, then my sister won't want to date you. Right? Like that's
We had somebody at our park for a long time that would not bring his fiancée out to the park.
Smart.
Absolutely would not introduce them. So for everyone in Winter's Edge listening, as Sir Dalos mentioned, the tie-in here is that his Squire was Sir Lorik. They grew up together. If he says Anthony or Tony over the course of the episode, we're talking about the same person there. And we were very happy to see him knighted at Keep on the Borderlands. You were going to be there, and so it worked out that we were able to do all of that. How did you get from that beginning where you and Lorik were coming out just to have fun to starting this path towards working at a sword belt?
I don't. So that's an interesting thing. For a long time, I was really more into being a very good assassin. I was a master assassin, was my first masterhood.
Oh, wow.
I was very into being a good wizard. Master wizard was my second masterhood. Even in the GCA days, after I was a good fighter, I mostly played healer or wizard on our teams because I thought tactically that was the place where we had plenty of people that were good with stick, and we had not as many people that were as good at making like very good spell lists and countering what the other teams were doing.
Mm-hmm.
A little secret, since Banner Wars doesn't really happen anymore, if you volunteered to Reeve, then you got to see the other team's spell lists. And in fact, they demanded that you do. And so, I would, especially if we weren't going first, I would see the other spell lists and then make spell lists to counter what they were doing, which they could have done with mine as well. So it wasn't an unfair advantage, but it was an intelligent thing to do. I'm not sure how many people did, but I absolutely did. So
that's solid play.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah. But transitioning into being interested in and becoming a sword knight, once I became a member of the Chosen, which happened a few years into foam fighting, which is my fighting company.
Mm-hmm.
Once I became a member of the Chosen, we took fighting less seriously actually in the beginning than we do now, but still very seriously. We've kind of gone up and down. Like, okay, this is the most serious we've taken it. It might have come down to this point at times, but it's always been a very integral part of what the Chosen is about. We have the most sword knights of any company in the entire game. Mm-hmm. By a fairly large margin.
Yeah.
So clearly we take fighting very seriously. But because of that, and because I made very good friends with Arthon, or Harry, I'm just telling you now because I will probably say Harry as we go through these discussions.
No, that's fine.
Sure. He and I would fight 3-4 times a week. Because we thought it was fun. I wasn't in pursuit of anything except for I wanted to be a good fighter. After SKBC came around, I actually really got a big kick out of going to other kingdoms and killing their sword knights. I really thought that was a lot of fun. And so I would never really enter tournaments or pursued sword knight. It wasn't that big of a deal for me until SKBC came around, and then I wanted to be able to teach because I always kind of had an interest in teaching. Will, or Michael Hammer God, he told me that, we only let sword knights teach, and so I had to start working on a sword belt. And so the reason why I only have Knight of the Sword and I don't have Warlord is because I stopped at, back in those days, you could get Defender and Weapon Master, mm-hmm. and that was all you needed. And so I was champion and I won Weapon Master, and that was all I needed. And I didn't see, tournaments have never been something I've been interested in. I'm kind of an anomaly that way. Yeah. I know a lot of people that are sword knights really think tournaments are the cat's meow and the signpost for skill, and our rules changes that made that the only path to becoming a sword knight certainly pigeonholed people into doing that. But I think that I think that's a little bit unfortunate. I think there's other ways, and I think the game's kind of heading in that direction now to make those other ways available. But for me, once I had the requirements that I needed, I had the box top of Knight of the Sword to teach at SKBC. That's what I was most concerned about. There's prestige involved with it and all that. And obviously I've already bragged about how many sword knights we have. So clearly I think it's important. And I certainly did think it's important. I'm not trying to minimize what importance I put on it, but my driving force for that was so I could teach at SKBC. And I think I assisted at 2 And then I've taught kind of since then, and I've never missed one. So I'm the only person left that hasn't missed any SKBCs at all.
Nice.
I mean, that's a really interesting means to that end, right? You wanted to teach it this so bad that you were willing to go be a sword knight just to do it. And I mean, the fact that you haven't missed one, that makes sense, right? That's really cool. I wanted to real quick touch on the Chosen, because that came up. And because when I scrolled through, we pull up people's Amped Wiki just to kind of, get a feel. And am I correct in saying that this is properly titled as the Sacred Order of the Righteous Brotherhood of the Chosen, Holy Warriors of Bob the Unforgiving?
You're almost correct. You have to pronounce the comma.
Oh my God. Okay. So I guess the reason that I asked is the logo is a torch, and just looking at your Amped Wiki before I scrolled down, I thought you were a torch. Is there a distinction there, or like what is the device seems the same?
Yeah, so torch is the nickname for the Chosen.
Okay.
We're also called Bobs by some people. We would generally call ourselves the Chosen, or you'll hear some of us call ourselves torches. But yeah, that's just another nickname for us.
Okay, I didn't know that. A lot of stuff from previous episodes now just clicked for me. So that's cool for me. I don't know if anybody else didn't know that, but there you go.
Man, it's some of the weird things that like those of us who've been in the game for a long time take for granted and just know part of our lexicon.
Yeah.
And then even though you've been in the game a little bit longer than others, that you didn't put those together is kind of impressive to me.
I didn't travel that much, so I
That's
never,
true. You had your son about the time that we started doing all of our traveling and went out and met these guys.
Yeah, I went to one SKBC in like Ohio. I may have met you. I think I took a sword and board class, and I think that might have been you, but it's been so damn long. I couldn't.
I'm glad it was so impressionable that it might have been me.
I honest to God, I think that's the only thing I remember from that. There was someone else that did a body mechanics class, and we swung heavy pipes at trees. Was that Clolibus?
Yeah,
okay.
That's Clolibus, yeah.
Sucked so bad. My shoulders were destroyed.
Great class, though.
Left a better impression than that one, because that one hurt me. No. So let's get back to the Sword Knight thing, though, because I think that's a really, really interesting goal. Is I want to teach this, and so that's why you go for it. What is for you? I guess teaching. What is the best method for that? When you teach someone, do you give them drills, or do you give them a set of exercises? What are you doing to kind of impart that knowledge?
It's an interesting question. There's a lot of different schools of thought on it. For myself, it varies by the person. There's no silver bullet to teach everyone. Everyone is going to learn differently. And so you have to tap into the things that make them understand and make them learn to be successful and to have them be successful. If I tried to use only one way of teaching, it just wouldn't work for people. So there's some people that I will give drills to, and I will say that my quote unquote drills aren't rigid drills. My drills usually are things that you do while you're fighting anyway, while you're sparring somebody. And you just kind of work this thing in, like I would have something called, just as an example, called 2-shot, where you're allowed to throw 2 shots, and then you have to kind of back out and defend until you kind of get reset, and then you can throw 2 shots again. It teaches you to throw very specific planned out shots, not just kind of throw peppers or throw 18,000 high crosses, right? Like I'm sitting here, and just so you people who can't see me, I'm throwing high crosses over here. But so 2 shots, one of them. Another one that I like to do would be called the defensive drill, where you have to block two or 3 shots or more. I would vary the number before you can throw anything. And that's an interesting thing, because what happens is when your mind's not so caught up in, I have to throw something, you see the opportunities that you could have thrown something, but because you're not so focused on throwing it, you go, oh, that was open, that was open, that was open. Then when it's your time, you kind of feel out their patterns of where they might be open. But because you weren't so, I gotta throw, you see those better. So those are that's a couple examples of the drills that I would use for someone to learn.
Okay, 2-shot's really interesting. The block 2 or block 3 is something I actually do as an exercise for myself.
We brought that. So we brought that back from SKBC 1 or 2. I think. I think it might have been 1 that me and Zeb, Sir Gillen, and a couple of other people went up to, and that was one of the things that was being discussed there is step back from, don't worry about throwing. Very much a uncloud your mind sort of thing. And you're right. It was what really started us on the path of, it's what gets you in the mindset of being able to say, I could have taken these, but had I been trying to throw, I might not have seen those. And starting to explore new shot combinations, that was a big thing for us to help explore new shot combinations. And because like a lot of mid-fighter amp guard at the time, we were much more concerned with getting the lead and kill immediately. Mm-hmm. And it definitely taught us patience. Maybe what I said was a really, really long way to just say that we needed patience, and that's what gave it to us. Well, so to piggyback off of that.
Excellent tool for that. No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I was going to say, Flo mentioned shots, and you have a shot that you patented, I guess, called the 512 or the 512. I'm not sure how that goes. Explain that to us. How did that come to be, and why did it get that name?
The 512. That's a very funny story. It's a spin shot, it got the name because the Austin area code is 512.
Okay.
And you were big wrestling fans back in the day.
The 619.
Rey Mysterio Jr. threw the 619, and I was like, all right, I can do something. And it's really funny because people would do things like think that it was positions of the hand on a clock and try to put their hands at 5 and 1 and 2 when they were trying to
I remember that, dude.
For us,
people were
us,
were doing all kinds of crazy things.
Me and Gillen had worked out that you had mapped out different hit locations, like the shoulders were 1 and 2, 3 was the center of the chest, and we were using that to try and rebuild.
Like it's a hockey goal. Like
yes,
there's a 5
we were
spot.
using that to try and rebuild. And I remember asking you one time, okay, so we've got it all worked out, but we're missing this component, and you just laughed at us. No, man, it's just the area code.
Yeah.
512 is the one where you throw and then spin out. Yeah, or no? Am I thinking
correct?
Something? Okay.
No, that's it. The other spin, the other really common spin, is just what we just call a backspin. There's variants on it. I have named some backspins just because they're different setups now. Like Wakanda Forever is a backspin setup.
Was that you? Did you patent that one also?
Yeah. So the shots that I've made that are spins are the Crazy Horse, Wakanda Forever, the DDS, the 512, and then everyone loves the One Love, which is the shuriken to backspin shot that's been kind of seen in a lot of places. So I think that's all I have. Sometimes I make things up and forget them, but mostly it's to remember setups. And the crazy names, I mean, obviously people love cool names, but I do that so that they remember the setup and remember like the different hand positions and the way to go into a shot, because a backspin's a backspin, but like the Wakanda Forever setup is different, right? So just as an example, remembering to go into it that way will actually help you take some time off of your backspin and will likely make it more successful just depending on who you're fighting against. So yeah, crazy names are crazy names. AK-47 is another shot that I named, but it's not a spin.
Okay.
I mean,
but they do help people remember.
Yeah, no, to play into that, like, I did a little Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Eddie Bravo basically did the same thing. Like, yeah, like he names every position so that on a phone call he can be like, oh no, you're in zombie, then you move to something else, or blah blah blah. So like it's a legitimate thing that happens, and I think it's really good. It revolutionized jiu-jitsu to some degree. So like arguably you've revolutionized amp guard fighting to some degree whenever you talk about the positions and names of those positions and things like that too. So
yeah,
it's really cool.
So beyond just the spin shots though, I mean, one of the things that has come out of your park is practiced accurate shots. I know that your park is a big fan, or at least was a big fan at one time, of practicing for either just straight kill shots or kill shots in arms, and not so much worrying about the leg unless it was going to be the kill shot that happens. And yeah, I mean, there's jokes have been made about that, but what you're really imparting there is teaching people how to be observant of kill shots and shots that are directly going to impact their ability to return, taking the arm or taking the shield arm or something like that, right? When did you start this journey of kind of refining these leads and these shots? What did that look like?
That would probably have been fighter practice. Let me see. Hold on. Let me look at my Sword Knight scroll real quick, just to get a date. Just to get a date.
Oh, that's good.
Just to get a date, right? Yeah. So maybe around the late 90s, we had fighter practice here in Austin, and I mean we had fighter practice throughout, but then I think then is kind of when we started Leg on Death, and it was for that reason, because in tournaments, the people that actively fought in tournaments didn't want to try to trade legs and then lose an arm, or trade legs and then die, like, oh, I hit a leg, but then I died. So we wanted to be a hip. We wanted to be a shoulder. Even arms are sketchy, right? Because you could trade an arm for a death as well, right?
Right.
That was our thought process behind it. I mean, it's a school of thought, and it's a way to learn how to fight and to be very precise with your shot placement. For me too, another thing that it did was I had a lot of hobbies, played lacrosse, played basketball, some, did Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, wanted my knees to be intact as I got older. Now I have a son who's 11 and plays basketball, and I can still play basketball with him because I didn't spend 32 years running up and down fields on my knees, right? Like, so that's one of the reasons why very early on, maybe even before, certainly, like, we might have been doing Leg on Death and I traveled a lot for a very long time, since SKBC 1 was a thing. So however long that is. And so when I would go other places, and Flo probably remembers this, like, I would take death on leg. If you hit my leg, I'm like, that's fine, I'm dead. Like, I decided for myself that this game wasn't worth my knees. And so I would just take a death on a leg, and that would be it. Now, I was young and prideful and scornful sometimes. I will admit to that.
I could have used that advice 10 years ago.
Yeah, because and now we have posting now. So that
right.
kind of fixes that problem, which is good. But, just because I wanted to be able to I'm 45 now, right? Like, I wanted to be able to get into my 50s and still be able to do things that are active, still have a chance that, like I said, playing basketball with my son, he'll be able to beat me in another year or two. He thinks he can now, but I don't think quite yet. But, the driveway is about to be fired because he's really good. So.
It's an interesting thought. I remember hearing a story of Spin watching Harry run down a flank, and saying that he was at that time, and I don't know, I think that this was around 98, 2000, that he was the best boardman in the game before his knees went out, and that he's still one of the best boardmen in the game then. And, this is Seth being Seth and talking, but still I considered it a fairly high compliment at the time. And it pointed out to me, who was also tall, like Arthon is, that it's something that I have to be mindful of. That, that's when you're just sparring around with your friends or something like that, accidents can happen. And I've hurt my knee just sparring around like that. So I don't think that that's necessarily it. We laugh about it sometimes, right? And our kingdom has, especially the guys that try, they die on legs and whatever. But I think that there's some good ideology behind that too.
Yeah, when they're 45 years old, we can have another conversation about it. But they have posting now, like I said too, right? Like, but also the terrain often in our parks was rocky too. So you could be going down hard on a knee on a rock, and mechs can do some things and they can't do other things, right?
Yeah.
But you will never go to a doctor, no doctor would ever see you running around on your knees and go, oh, that's a terrifically good idea for you to be doing that.
Right.
So I was like, I don't even have to go ask a doctor if this is a good idea. I already know it's a bad one.
Right.
So,
well, we can all take Sir Flo here as an example too. Like, you broke your ankle or your talus.
I did.
Just talking on the phone at field one day.
I did. I had.
And it's because of a history of like hurting yourself previously, and it was
the same ankle that I broke at the SKBC that was in Ohio, or wherever that was, the one that you went up to.
Yeah.
In Michael's five man teamwork class.
Yeah.
That one was
a good class.
It was a great class. I absolutely loved it. And the terrain, it moved. It was so wet that the grass actually moved on top of the dirt below it. And I had a bigger guy fighting beside me who saw that I was taking care of a flank and stepped over to catch a block for me, and did catch the block, and we killed the guy. It was beautiful teamwork on his part. I'm a horrible sideman. But the grass broke free, like a big clump of turf broke free and slid, and he fell onto my knee, and I still wore cleats at that time. I haven't worn cleats at all, and it snapped my leg straight down to the turf. And they run over thinking that I've blown my ACL and MCL, because that's what it looked like. And my foot was planted, and so they grabbed my ankle and did what you're supposed to do. They straightened my ankle up, and I just screamed. And Michael came over running, "No, don't touch the ankle! Don't touch the ankle!"
Every part of that sucks.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
That's rough.
But again, all of that happened because we were taking legs.
Yeah. So no. So going back to Arthon for just a second here. He's kind of notorious about the 38-inch sword. It's kind of specific about it. Everything I ever see. And I know there's no good answer for what size sword a person should be using. All right, it's a lot of personal style and everything else like that. But how much of how much of a person's kit goes into a particular fighting style, and how much of that, like, would you say a tall person should use longer swords in general, or is there any hard and fast rule to that?
Let's talk about Harry Arthon here for just a little bit. Okay. It's widely believed amongst the very best fighters in the game, or a good portion of them. Many of them call him the GOAT. I include myself in that. Greatest of all time, right?
We've heard it many times.
Yeah.
He's been a high level fighter for a very long time, 4 decades.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter to an extent. I think he would be terrible with the 28, but anything like a 36, even like a 34, he's fine with. Now a 38 plays well into what he likes to do. He fights very much kind of at a long and a mid-range game, and then he'll press in on you kind of hard and can hit you in places that you're not expecting with some of the crosses that he throws.
Mm-hmm.
And, you'll think you have a guard in place, and then the last few inches of the sword will slip past it, which is common, but it's something that he excels at. He can also hit Boardman's right arm Boardman's sword side shoulder with very precise, with little room to get in between the sword. He can get this right shoulder with very little room, which is why if you see me fight, my sword almost rests on top of my head, because I'm blocking that. And really, he's probably one of the few people that can hit it with that precision. But I fought him so much for so long that I'm just like, I'm taking this completely away from you.
Yeah.
So I'll keep my sword like that, keep the roof on the house, some people say, right? Like completely take that shot away. Because one, I don't want to have to move my shield over there to block it, because my sword's already there. And it leaves you susceptible to feints anyway, like ass wrap feints, if you're going to start moving your shield that way. So that's one of the things. But the 38 for him, like, really, when you're developing your fighting style and finding things that you like, you should try various lengths of sword, right? You can put anything in a killer's hand and he's going to be a killer. Like I believe that. Even the 28 that I talked about, I mean, I'm talking about at high levels when I say Arthon wouldn't be great with the 28 of fighting like other people on the very high levels of the game, but he's going to kill
Yeah, you
tons
could
of
kill
people
me,
with
yeah.
the 28, right? but you should know how to use various lengths of swords and find the one that really meshes with the style that you want to use. And the thing is too, like that's going to change over time, right? Like way back in the day, I would fight with a 28 or a 32, something really pretty short. And I would get deep on the inside, press in hard and get deep on the inside and throw kind of shots that people aren't used to. And I can still do that to this day, but I've kind of landed on a 34 and a half. And more lately, I have a back injury. That's not going to go away. I have a permanent back condition. And so more lately, to protect my back, I've adopted the 38 because it prevents me from doing some of the crazy inside stuff I want to do that'll hurt my back, right? Or it makes it very difficult for me to do it because even choking up, like the blade is a lot to get on the inside and work around in there and do like the bendy, twisty things that I can do deep on the inside. So my point to that is, as your body changes, your fighting style might change them, and the length of sword that you prefer might change to go along with, how much you're going to move your feet, where you're going to want to stand, if you're going to want to play at range, the different kinds of things that you're trying to accomplish. So, but I would say it's very important. It meshes with your style. Harry didn't always use a 38. That's a relatively recent development, honestly. When I say recent, obviously we've been doing this for 32 years now. So, maybe in the last 10 years, whatever. So
I may need to adopt a 38-inch sword because I also have back problems. And
Join
so
me.
To piggyback off that a little bit, you had mentioned where you used a 28 and 30-inch sword. Was the tech level at that time a factor? Like, do you think now that some people who want to get inside, is that really an appropriate length anymore? Or do you think that the speed of the weapons are faster now, so maybe it's not?
I still think that it's probably okay if you want to get deep on the inside, and especially if you're shorter. It kind of goes against like maybe what you would think logic would be, that if you're shorter, you should use a longer weapon. But honestly, when you get deep inside people that are tall, unless they really, really know what they're doing on the inside, and the number of people that I think that are tall and really know what they're doing on the inside, I can count on one hand. It's very small. So, someone like Clolibus is very short, and he'll use a shorter weapon. He doesn't really fight anymore, but when he did, he would get deep on the inside of people and they had no idea what to do. And it was the same thing for me. I'm 5'8", and I would get deep on the inside of people, and they, most foam fighters aren't used to that hard press and someone getting that far on the inside of them. They're more used to, we're going to wander up to mid range and now we'll kind of exchange whatever shots we're going to do here. So when you press into them and you get into that just outside of board to board or board to board position, they kind of freak out, and their gear, where it should kind of tighten in, it kind of goes high, and then things get exposed, and they panic and their feet do bad things, and they plant. Yeah. So, if it's someone who's really willing to train on, one, getting on the inside in a safe manner, and then two, throwing shots on the inside that are beneficial, then a shorter sword, because your angles are better, right? You don't have to deal with all that blade. So I could see it still being a thing for some people.
Okay. That makes sense. One other thing related to, I guess, equipment, and this might be a little bit of a local cut. I'm not sure if this has made its way outside of Winter's Edge at large, but a lot of folks will say that board is a black hole that sucks in talent.
That came from outside of Winter's Edge.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I hear it a lot, and I wanted to preface it with, I don't know if it's, but what's your opinion on that? Because I've been fighting board a lot, and having heard that probably too much here lately, I've been fighting a lot more Florentine to try and open myself up to new stuff. Is there any merit to that, or is it just kind of a thing that people say?
I think it's just a thing that people say. The thing is, like, a couple things on this point that we should talk about. One, you play this game to have fun. Like at the end of the day, you play this game to have fun. So letting other people dictate to you how you have fun seems counterproductive, counterintuitive, right? Now, I have tried to steer people to the righteous path of the board, but it's not the only righteous path. You find the thing that's fun for you, and if being the most effective is fun for you, it's going to vary just depending on who you're fighting against, right? Flow might be troublesome if you fight poles all the time. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be an uphill battle. So I'm not saying it can't be done. That's not my point, but it might be relatively miserable for you to deal with that on a constant basis as a Florentine fighter, especially with talented polemen that are willing to hit you very hard. But so board doesn't to be a very high level, high end fighter at board takes a lot of understanding. It takes understanding of your board. It takes understanding of what to do with it, what not to do with it, depending on what kind of board you prefer, dome or flat, punch. There's different ways to fight with all three of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of variance in board. You could be an inside fighter, outside range, and all the very talented board fighters I know. Again, you put anything in their hand, and the killer is going to be the killer, right? Like they're gonna be fine single, they're gonna be fine Florentine. Like it's not gonna be thing, because why important in fighting is timing. Important in fighting is that understanding of distance and distance control. Important in fighting is precision placement, right? Speed plays into it a little bit, but just an understanding and your combat computer, right, of what your opponents are likely to do and how you can minimize their effectiveness are all things that play into it and are largely irrelevant for what style you have in your hand. Now, how you act with it, what you do, obviously what you have in your hand is going to matter, but understanding of it and all those concepts, what you have in your hand is not going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I actually wanted to touch. Why do you feel better?
Because I like fighting board.
Oh,
I'm not good at Florentine. I've just been trying to learn it.
I never said that you couldn't fight board.
No, you didn't. Other people did.
No, you touched on something that I think is really important. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you was we have a lot of people that are either new to fighting in our very young kingdom or are what I would call people that are kind of just now starting on their journey towards becoming better fighters. And we've had a fairly big turnover in this past 5 years of new influx of new players coming in and things like that. And there's a lot of great online resources that they have available to them now, specifically some of the stuff on the dojo and some of the other channels that you and some of the other Sword Knights run. But if we could take a moment to pull it out of those videos and just have a one-on-one conversation here, someone that has gotten the basics down, they understand what a sword is and how to hold it, and that there's a couple of different grips that they can use, and they're really starting to dig into feeling out their own body style and the types of weapons and shots that are going to work for them. What are some places that they could start? I know that you and some of your talks that you do on Facebook, which we will definitely hype in the comments, some of the talks that you do on Facebook and through some of your other media, you've talked about working on just a couple shots to begin with and working on your feet. Is that kind of the advice that you would give for someone that was, let's say, a year and a half into the game and was interested in going farther?
100%. Like if you think about any sport that you take part in, well, for the most part, maybe not any sport, but for the most part, the sports that you take part in, your footwork is going to be fundamentally important to everything that you do. Where you place your feet, how you place your feet, your stance, everything else kind of follows that, obviously. So learning how to do that earlier, in fact, if I could go back and do it all again, 30 years ago, whatever, then I would have really learned to train my feet much earlier than I did. But, I played sports growing up and had a natural kind of tendency to do that anyway. So that helped a lot, but really understanding how important that footwork and foot placement and all that is, was probably when I took a big kind of leap in my fighting and also in my teaching, was understanding those concepts. So starting on your feet kind of as early as possible, is definitely something I would recommend.
Can we dig into footwork? Because like it gets tossed around a lot.
It does. Yeah.
But no one's really putting the words like directly for a lot of people what footwork means for AmpGuard. Can you get a little bit into that?
Yeah. So first, I'll do a little bit of my own plugging just because, but on my YouTube channel, which is Yakima Hero, and on One Grind Nation Facebook page, I've done the why of footwork, and I've done, closing with a purpose, and I've done, pelling with a purpose, and the footwork of shots, and all those kind of things that are all about footwork and putting your feet in the right places. Mm-hmm. So I would say definitely go look at those resources.
Yeah.
And it'll kind of help to answer those questions.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, but just to kind of basically cover it, for AmpGuard and for foam fighting in general, because I teach people from a few different games now. Sure. But for foam fighting in general, putting your feet in the proper place as you're throwing a shot and understanding distance and closing and how to close and not exposing targets by moving incorrectly are fundamental. Like basic level, it should be basic level understanding. That's why like you very rarely see me call any footwork class, and I don't really like to call any class that I teach advanced anything. Right. The SKBC WAK, who are all friends and I love them all dearly, so that's fine. But they call things advanced and whatever. Fighting is fighting. It's people try to mystify it some and make it so it's this thing, and you'll hit this level of understanding and this Zen moment when you learn these mystical secrets. Well, there's no mystical secrets. It's interesting, and I'll just reference something that a coach of my son said very recently that I really thought was interesting. He said, he's like, Nico, that's my son's name. He's like, Nico, when you're in high school and when you're in college, the drills that you're doing right now are going to be the same drills. They're just going to be faster.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same thing. It's just going to be faster. There's no advanced secrets. There might be some footwork things that he learns or whatever, and maybe a couple extra drills, but at the fundamental level, it's the same thing. Your understanding's better. You move faster, you do it faster. And so, if we as foam fighters got to that point in that understanding where we understood that concept as teachers, understood that concept and try to teach people, hey, there's nothing mystical here. It's going to be these things, and you're just going to get better at them, and you're going to get more precise at them. So a strong understanding of the fundamentals and strong exercise in that space is going to be the best thing for you. And, as we get better at teaching that, and I think we have, by the way, gotten better at teaching that, people will be better at fighting, where, when someone like someone who's 13 now coming into the game, if they last till they're 45, the stuff that they're going to be doing is going to be insane compared to what I'm doing right now. That's my sincere hope anyway. But
yeah, at the SKBC, and I think it was 2016 or 17, the one that was up in Atlanta, close to us. I remember drawing your ticket to sit and fight with you, and you and I were just messing around and doing some light sparring for about a minute before you said, "Hey man, don't you have a class to get to? Don't you have a teacher that you're supposed to be lining up with?" I was like, "Yeah, it's you. I picked you for this block." Why? I'm a boardman. Why did you pick me? But no, I specifically wanted to pick your brain while we were fighting, because it had been a while since I had fought a boardman outside of our own kingdom. And you get used to the way that people move inside of your own kingdom. You learn to fight a person, right? And not necessarily a style. And one of the pieces of advice that you gave me as we were walking away was your footwork's not where it needs to be. Everything else, you just need to practice more. But your footwork here, you've gotten lazy because you're used to what your friends will and won't do. And that's not going to get you where you want to be. So I say this just to reiterate that a lot of new people focus on trying to get this crazy new shot or learning this weird block or something like that. But to go back to what you said at the very beginning of this portion of the podcast, it all starts with your feet. And being in bad positioning starts with your feet, and working to get out of a bad position that you may find yourself starts with your feet. So taking that as a first step and just learning things like ranging and distancing and angles that you can create just with small steps I think that is some of the best advice that I've received from you and from other people over the years, that it's never one big grand step. I think that you described it as, it's not a mystical journey or anything like that, but it's not that you look back at any one point and go, oh man, it's all come together now. It's plateaus that are frustrating, and then learning how to break through those. And footwork was one of the big things. My footwork isn't good, but it's certainly better than it used to be. And footwork was one of the things for me that certainly pushed me over that big plateau that I was on for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think you touched on something there too. You don't get to a point where you've earned enough experience points that suddenly you can beat people of 7th order of the warrior or higher. You just sort of end up there through practice. So Flo mentioned something in his last bit there, and we've talked about it several times, and it's come up on other episodes, and I've never thought to ask. Like, I always think about it after the fact. We've mentioned fighting styles 3 or 4 times now, and I didn't know, is there like a clear taxonomy of these different fighting styles? Do they have names, or is it just a general, everyone has a unique style that's only theirs?
I would say that regionally there's some commonality in fighting styles. Like, generally speaking, if I fight people, a good portion of the time I can pick out where they're from by how they're fighting.
Oh, wow.
Or I used to. Now there's a lot more kingdoms, and there's a little bit more, cross-pollination. But for a long time, I could be like, oh, that person's from the Pacific Northwest. Oh, that person's from the East Coast. Oh, that person's from even Dallas, right? Even from Dallas to Austin, right?
Really?
But people want to talk about rogue style, and some people want to talk about torch style, which isn't really a thing, but they like to talk about it. And even wheel style, people talk about the wheel style. And Anatole and Eric fight pretty differently. That's Eric is Shion, sorry. Okay. Anatole and Shion fight, if you have an understanding of fighting, they don't fight very similar to one another. They fight pretty differently. Myself and Arthon and Draknar have very different styles, and even Arthon and Draknar, who are both tall, have very different styles and ways that they fight. And myself and Colobus are very, very different in how we fight, just naming the people from around here. So
right.
I understand that the rogues teach a method that lead to their Florentine fighters having some similarity, but even in the rogues, like Frank and Seth, I wouldn't say that they really fight a ton like each other, right? And I know Spin doesn't really play Amtgard anymore, but they don't. That's Shadow. Sorry, Shadow.
Yeah, Frank is Shadow.
Spin.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Seth is Spin. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that they have like this super similarity, but of course in every company there are people who fight similar. There are people who fight like I do to some extent. In my company, there's people who, to some extent, it's difficult to fight. Like, I kind of do some crazy things at times. And there are people who have similarity to Harry because they learned from him and they learned some of his good shots and his tricks, right? Arthon. But to say there's one style, I would say no. You end up finding your own style. Like, I'll use Jiu-Jitsu as an example here because I like to use Jiu-Jitsu as an example for something like this. And this is really when I think something that really helped me learn these concepts about foam fighting and learn to be a better teacher was when I took Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I took it with the owner of the dojo where you'll see us fight if you watch our live streams. And watching him teach and watching him unravel things, for me, he figured out the things that I was good at and then helped me put pieces into those things. So when a teacher tells you, all right, if you have a terrible habit that a teacher asks you to change, that's one thing. But if a teacher says you need to change everything that you do, you should right away be cautious about that teacher.
Right.
Because you probably have some things that you're good at and some things that you lean towards with your body style, with whatever physical abilities you have, maybe physical limitations you have. So someone telling you you need to wholesale change everything shows a lack of understanding in the teaching realm. And what Master Don did for me is, and I say master because he teaches Kung Fu as well, so that's his title.
Oh, wow.
But what he did for me was add in things to the things that he figured out early on that I naturally gravitated towards and liked to do. And when I went and visited a black belt teacher in and this is another very telling thing from Jiu-Jitsu, I went and visited a black belt teacher in San Jose, California, where my brother lives. And his name was Gumby. I don't know what his real name was, but everyone called him Gumby. Anyway, I showed up early and he said, well, you're here early. And I had asked him if I could come visit. And he was gracious enough to say, yeah, sure, come through, have a class with us. But I showed up early and he said, well, let's just roll around a little bit. Let's see what you're about. And so we slapped hands and he let me work and he felt the things that I like to do. And, he would let me get so far in something, then he'd block it and escape, and he'd let me get so far in something, and he'd block it and escape. And he could have tapped me out whenever he wanted to. And I wasn't early on. A lot of jiu-jitsu teachers will decide if you're arrogant or not. And if they think you're arrogant and not there to learn, then they will tap you out in like 20 or 30 seconds.
It's
just so
so
you understand, just so you understand, that that shouldn't be what it's about. And he didn't do that to me because he could tell I wanted to learn and I wanted to see. I wasn't cranking things like crazy. I wasn't trying to muscle into techniques. I was there to learn from him. And once he figured that out, like I said, he let me put stuff on. Then he tapped me out a couple of times as I was going through things. And then after that, like I said, I showed up early. So he probably gave me like a 45-minute private. That was one of the best privates I ever had, where he was like, these are the things that you like to do that I can tell you're good at and that you go for. Let's build on that. And he gave me some things that I had not been shown before to put into my game to make it better and stronger, to tighten up a few things, to add new setups to disguise some of the stuff I was doing, right? And a good teacher will do that exact thing. And so, but I learned that from jiu-jitsu, and I learned kind of that understanding from both Gumby and from my teacher and the owner of the dojo, Don, showed me that you teach someone to be good within the confines of the skill sets that they have and the things that they like to do. Should you add to that? Absolutely. But you're not going to stray. We just said the things that you do now, you're going to do as you progress. You're just going to do them faster and better, right? And so you're not going to stray a ton from the structure that you build that's going to be the base of your fighting style. So I hope that answers the question.
That's a better answer than I could have hoped for, honestly. Holy shit.
So this is something that's really interesting too, because it's something that I don't think, everyone says travel, right? But why we travel is to learn from different people. And what Dalos has touched on too is even in the jiu-jitsu community, travel is kind of a thing too. So I'm fortunate enough that the place I trained at is Samuel Braga, and he's I don't know how many time world champion guy now. It's in 9 or 11 or something like that, right? So we actually get people from Brazil coming up to train with him, and so that's one of the things that he's talking about is the perspective on what you are doing. So if your park mates who you train with all the time are seeing things hey, you should maybe try this or that or blah blah blah. You're open here.
Yeah.
Going to get someone else to see that perspective differently can lead to faster training or faster improvement, as well as the people that you train with are missing something. Like Flo was saying, he haven't fought people outside of our kingdom in a while, so he needed someone else to show him where he can not be lazy at or something like that too. So it's really, really important.
Yeah. The takeaway for me obviously that was a big part of it, but also I have been going to a lot of people saying, fix me, tell me what to do to fight better. And they've never done that. They have done what you said, where they've said, well, here's what you're good at and here's what you could work on. And I've been mad. I'm these people can't teach worth a shit. But I think I've been fundamentally looking at how things are taught wrong.
Yes.
And also the other thing I learned is I need to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because this is like the 4th endorsement of it on our podcast.
I'm not going to lie. Doing jiu-jitsu is like this weird, like mind-blowing experience, even though it shouldn't be. And this is why it looks like a cult from the outside looking in.
Secret Kumite in the woods or something, right?
Right. Because like the way you learn jiu-jitsu, because it's so hands-on, is honestly very similar to how we should be learning amp guard and things like that too, because of the way the martial arts kind of takes that teaching, and more specifically the way jiu-jitsu does. And I can't stress enough the way I thought about having to fight in jiu-jitsu versus the way I fought in amp guard has changed greatly because of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and if I could pull one thing out that you said, Dalos, that I think is really, really important, and I want to make sure that it really sinks into everybody listening. We have discussed travel both in this month of Sword Belt and outside of it, and all of the great things that you can get from it. But you touched on why we travel, and I don't know if we've ever actually really dug down into that. You are not just traveling to go fight new people, though that's great. You are traveling to learn how those new people are killing you and how you're killing them. You and your friends fighting every single week can start to fall into patterns, and this is to break that pattern. And I think that it's a really, really important step to point out there that there is a reason behind just going and traveling. Going and traveling alone is good, but it's not going to necessarily accomplish what you want if your goal is to become a better fighter. You're being mindful while you're doing it. You know, we used to do a thing where in the car ride home after an SKBC, we would be talking and say, okay, well, I fought Arthon and Dalos a lot. You know, how were they killing you? You know, you're bored. I was going Florentine, and of course you guys were bored. And, you know, how were they killing you? Well, they kept on taking a step into their right and doing a deep wrap into my left side. And they killed me there until they got bored and moved on to another shot. Well, okay, this tells everyone in the car something really important about flow. First, I apparently have an opening there that they have not been exploiting, which is a big problem for them because it could help them win tournaments. And it's a big problem for me because I'm going to keep dying without it. Little pieces of information like this are how you as a part collectively grow, but more importantly is how you as a person grow. And when you follow the links in our videos to watch some of the dojo stuff, you guys actually touch on this quite a bit when you're running through and doing your fighting, that, you know, hey, you've died there a couple of times. Be mindful of this. Be watching out for where people are killing you. So I wanted to revisit that because I feel like it's a very, very important point in this, that if you do want to do travel, know that is the reason that you're doing it. And if there's any other reasons that you can think of, Dalos, I'd love to hear them too, but that one was the one that stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, for travel, for me, it is exactly that. Like I go to learn, and nowadays I go to teach them as well, you know, and just see what people have available, see what they're kind of meshing with, what they're grooving on. To add, you know, what's funny is Beefy, he's from Tennessee, right?
Yep, he is. Yeah,
Florida. Okay, yeah. So Beefy actually taught Harry and I a spin shot way back in the day that we still use to this day, and I still teach sometimes. So shout out to him. I mean, I haven't seen that dude in forever, but
we work with him. We'll let him know.
Yeah, definitely. But Harry and I had a ton of fun with that, and it's something that we still teach. And not only do we teach it, but Aeolus, when he's more active, right now he's dealing with injury, so he's not as active, but he would also teach it, and he's a lefty. And so, you know, it was a spin shot that we originally learned from him. I would say he gave us the base foundation for what it was, and then we made some modifications to it, right?
Yeah,
but we would not have had that base foundation without traveling, right? So, and I've even changed it a little bit since then because obviously things evolve. But original credit has to go to him to travel, for seeing that, and for our willingness, even back then, to want to learn. And I don't know how serious he was about fighting. Even then, he kind of used a shield and a spear, as I recall.
He still does that.
But
the Slim Jim is a legitimate combination. Thank you very much.
but I'm just saying, like, but I didn't use that as a barrier for me not to learn something from him, right? So that plays into the example that you're having, and still a shot that we teach to this day, that gets used for opposite hand sword and board especially.
Yeah.
So there you go.
For a new person that is interested in upping their fighting game, how many base shots do you think that they should have and be working on at any given time? I mean, they get exposed. People get exposed to a whole lot more than you did when you were coming up, or even I did, or Lucas or Cabbage when he was kind of coming up in the game, because they have access to all of the content that our Sword Knights are putting out on the internet now, and we didn't have that. But if you had to put a number on it, they're going to see 100,000 different new leads and shots and things. What should you be focused on at any one time, given this same scenario that I gave you before of someone that's, year and a half into the game?
I would say that it's going to depend, but I would say what you're looking for isn't necessarily shots. Maybe 2 or 3 is the number, but you're looking for threats, right? I need to have a board side threat. I need to have a sword side hip threat. I need to have a sword side shoulder threat, right? So when you can successfully be a threat to 3 or even better yet 4 hit locations, then your game can groove off of that. Now, I wouldn't start with 3. I would probably start with sword side hip and shield side shoulder, right? Against the boardman. Against the Florentine person, I would start with their left hand shoulder and their right hip, right? Things that play off of each other that you can build into combos and that you can build into feints are what you want to, because if I feint something at you and you know that I have no chance of hitting it, then if you're good at all, you're not going to react to that feint because you're like, you can't throw that shot. Why would I move my stuff for you, right? But if I have a legitimate threat, then you have to acknowledge that threat, because the best feints are just shots you don't throw, right? So if I make a twitch feint towards your board shoulder and you don't react and I can hit you in that shoulder, well, that's a problem for you, right? So I make it so you have to do something, and then I can go back to, feint here, sword side hit, like, right? So it's more locations than it is shots, but you want to have a couple viable threats to begin with. Again, I would say hip shoulder, opposite hip, opposite shoulder, right? And then you kind of want to build out from there, because when you find the shots that you're comfortable with, that you like, then you can build into sword side shoulder. Then you can build into ass wrap on the shield side, right? Then if they're flow, you can build into, a stab to the stomach, a hip. You can build into the other shoulder, that you're crossing for if you're a boardman, right? Like, it's more about location, I would say. And obviously, yes, you need shots to hit those locations. You need setups, but you'll kind of naturally find the ones that you gravitate towards if you listen to yourself. Listen to the people that are teaching you, and listen to yourself and the things that you like to throw, right? Now, don't get hard-headed and say, no, I'm listening to me and you're wrong. You're telling me like not to listen to me. Like, the people who are helping you are probably wanting to give you pieces that make it better to do what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But definitely understand as you're progressing, where you naturally like to go, and build your game kind of off of that.
Huh.
Man, you kind of indirectly hit at something really good too in the last 2 little segments, is that pretty much anyone can teach you something. Just, it doesn't have to be exactly as they've done it. You can modify it into your repertoire, right? And it's kind of body type to just your physicality or something like that too. And it can be, someone who's been in the game for a year. It can be someone who's been in the game for 10 years or something like that. It doesn't matter. You can pick up good things off of anybody. You just have to look at it with an open mind.
Yeah, I also really like the idea of thinking of them as threats and not as specific shots.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a new thing to me in some ways, because I haven't been to SKWC in a few years. So
yeah,
I'm not learning this specific hip wrap. I'm learning a shot or perhaps range of shots that I already have that could be improved that is a threat to that area.
Yeah, and I mean, like when I'm going back through and thinking of all the stuff I normally do when I'm fighting, and that's exactly what it is. Like other than my high cross, which is just beautiful.
No.
Yeah, I know. But like in general, it's correct. Those are just threats to an area, and how I sell those or how effective I am at them actually is a big part of the shot and the combo I can make off of it. I'd never thought of it that way before.
So, Sir Dalos, do you prescribe to what I have heard some of the other sword knights teach with, either having your threat zones as a high, a medium, and a low, or a left, a center, and a right? Do you think that helps, that kind of visual representation helps people, or do you like to use the body more? Because the example that you were giving were more threats to the shoulder, threats to the hip. And I think that it's an important distinction because one of them kind of pulls it out into a three-dimensional environment in front of you, and one of them is more focused on your movements towards a specific spot on your opponent's body.
Yeah, that one's an interesting question because proper movement sometimes is counterintuitive to what you think it might be. Like if I want to hit you sword side hip and I'm a right-handed fighter and you're a right-handed fighter, I'm going to step right to give myself the angle to hit your sword side hip. I'm not going to step left, even though, there are shots I have that I would step left with, but in general, I'm going to step right to open that shot up because it's going to give me the angle I need to get past your shield, et cetera, right? So I guess using spacing and those threat ranges, I guess that they use red,
yellow,
blue, green, purple, whatever. I don't really use any of that. And I don't have a problem with people that use that. I use, close, mid, and far as ranges go. And then I'm more about like the spacing, right? You don't want to hang out in what I call the dead zone unless your defense is really, really good. And then even then you're kind of sacrificing a lot to do this. So for me, you want to move into and out of zones of threat with a purpose, right? So as you close, you're moving in with a purpose, and your movements should threaten things, right? You can control a fight by the threat that you impose on someone, right? If you are fighting, let's try this. If you're fighting a left-handed fighter, step to your left a lot and see what happens, and then step to your right a lot and see what happens, and just feel that control, right? If you're board, this is board versus board, right? But even Florentine, fighting a Florentine person, step to the right and see how they react, and step to the left and see how they react, right? Because it's going to be different, and you'll get a sense of what they want to do and a sense of controlling the fight and how you can take control of a fight. Or if you want to yield control, right? And I say yield control, what I really mean is like, if you want to yield space to let them close on you, that's fine. It's a very viable tactic, especially if you're tall. But you want to move in a certain way that they're going to put themselves in bad situations when they move. And moving left and right will give you information to help you put them in bad situations as the fight progresses. And you really want to kind of start that outside of range. But I definitely always am thinking about, I want them to feel threatened in this area, and this is the way I'm going to move to make them feel threatened in this area, because then I'm going to probably use this feint, and then I'm going to probably ultimately hit them there. Or if they don't react fast enough, I'm just going to kill them, because it doesn't have to be a feint. It's just going to be them dead. Right. So I would just say, depending on what area you're going to hit, you're going to move maybe a little bit differently. But that's a long way of talking about like a whole fighting style, right? So I wouldn't say I put it in a box like you're talking about. It's very kind of broad for me, and a lot of it too is just based on feel. And that's where I'd say you can kind of level up, like we were talking about earlier, as you level up in your feel. It doesn't mean you're going to kill, anyone more or less, or you get more skilled fighters. It's going to mean that you're making better decisions, right?
Yeah.
But if they're also training and if you're going up and they're also going up, right, sometimes it's hard to catch up. That's just a reality.
Yeah.
But you will be making better decisions as you get better at fighting, and you'll put yourself in better positions instead of like, getting one shot over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
That leads to a very important point. You should definitely track that progress and pat yourself on the back for it, because it's an unrealistic goal to say, I'm going to beat so-and-so who's been a warlord and a sword knight forever, and they still fight 3 times a week. My goal is to beat them on a regular basis. And, you're only going to be able to fight once a week because that's your reality. Well, that's a stupid goal, because you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. They haven't stopped fighting. They're going to continue progressing, but your goal should be a little more reasonable. I'm going to make better choices, and I'm going to be a more challenging fight for him. And maybe I get a kill or 2 here and there. Realistically, he's probably going to still beat me, or they're probably going to still beat me, but I am going to make better decisions, and I'm going to present myself as more of a threat, and I'm going to learn to do X in the fight, right? And you progress that way, and you should stop and pat yourself on the back when that happens, not go, God, that guy still kills me all the time, because you're not having any fun. You're not acknowledging your growth. You're not having any fun, and you're hamstringing your own growth and your own learning because you're too busy being frustrated because you've set an unreasonable goal to begin with. So anyway.
Yeah. And you can do this with your friends too. If your friends know that you're trying to work towards something, don't stop after every single fight and talk. But, if it's been 3 or 4 fights that you've had, stop and say, hey man, what am I doing? What are you seeing that's causing you to throw that particular shot? Especially if you're dying in the same sort of area every time, if it's always your right side, whether it be arm or hip or something like that. Because it could be something simple in how you're moving that's causing that.
100%. And we play King of the Hill a lot, because there's a reason why we do that. Because if you're one of the better fighters, then what everyone else in the line should be doing is working against you, working together to kill you, right? Like they should be planning. We make a very big deal out of turning the circle, which means I killed everyone in the line, and it came back to the beginning, right? So no one ever wants you to turn the circle, and I make a very big deal of it on purpose, because I want them to not want that to happen, right? I use it to taunt Harry, which has been a hobby of mine for many, many years now. But he uses it to taunt me, right? But they should not want that to happen, and everyone in the line should be continuously working together to go, okay, we need to figure out how to get him out of the middle. Like whoever's in the middle, we need to figure out how to get him out of the middle. These are the things he's doing. This is what I think you should try. And then you're doing exactly what Flo talked about. You're intelligently working towards getting better at your fighting as a group of people. So people who know what you can and can't do, will be working with you to say, hey, you should try this. I think it'll be successful, right? And they get good results when they do that. And when they're kind of just socializing in line and messing around, then they get sent to the back of the line again. Some people spend 20, 30 minutes in the middle, you know what I mean? But yeah.
Man, something that's a big commonality is having a core group of friends that you guys are, that you fight with a lot. Like if you're looking to get better, you need, at least one other person, and I think preferably in 2 or 3 other people that you practice 2 to 3 times a week with to get better, if that's like your main goal, right? But obviously keep having fun on top and everything like that. But Anatole spoke about having his friends having nothing to do around Las Cruces and getting together and fight. We at Mystic Glade, well, now at Radiant Valley, had
Mystic Valley?
Yeah, right. Have a group of people who have stuck together forever and fought together. Dalos has, I assume, Arthon and
Draknar
and Draknar and everyone who he fought with over and over again. Goldwyn had
Stinkfoot
and Chohag.
All of Falling Fire.
Yeah, basically, right. So like find a core group of people, 2, 3, 4 friends that you can get together with semi-regularly and fight together. Like that alone can help you really well, but all these other things we've touched on just accelerates that.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to find at least one other interested person, and when the excitement builds, like this second go around, and the thing that actually created OGN and kind of created the dojo, the second go around, I was kind of sitting on my couch, not doing anything. Hadn't really been active in fighting. I would travel to events, and that's about it. And, someone came and said, "You're very good, and you're a very good teacher, and you're sitting on your couch not doing anything, and I want to get better." And I said, "Okay. I will go to a fighter practice at least once a week. That's 5 minutes from my house. If you want to learn, you can come there, and I'll go out there and fight and teach." Right. And word got out that I was doing that with him, and 2 or 3 more people wanted to come. And then for a while, it was just the 4 of us, or the 3 of us. And then, like Sponge wanted to come and get involved. And that's kind of where he really began his warlord push. Right. And other people that were local wanted to get involved. And Harry, of course, when I was fighting on the regular, he wanted to come and fight just because he and I have been fighting for 30 plus years, and he's still my favorite fight in the whole entire game. Like we just have, it's just always super fun when we're going at it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we just have this, I would say like Balboa Creed kind of thing going on, kind of an old school reference, but yeah. So it grew from there, and then it turned into, we would have days where 20, 25 people would be at the dojo. Of course, once we got an indoor facility, it kind of blew up even more. But we would have 20, 25 people at the dojo wanting to fight, and that started from one person telling me, "Get off your couch and come teach me." Like you're not doing anything. Like, get off your couch and come teach me to be a better fighter. So,
I mean, I really like that. Even if you're not super active and someone comes and gets you, then you're still more than willing to come teach film fighting stuff. It's really impressive to me. And like just in general, that your move for sword belt was teaching. I really, really love that. Do you think that in general, do you think that with sword belt and stuff like that, do you see like a move for teaching being like a big thing with it, or is it kind of like, I got it, it's fine, whatever, this is me?
I wouldn't want to put the things that I've done, I guess, as a sword knight, as a signpost or a milestone that other sword knights need to strive for, because everyone's going to do their own thing and everyone's going to do it in a different way. There are people who think that in order to be a good knight, you have to teach. I don't necessarily know that that's true. First of all, I don't know what a good knight is. I couldn't tell you if I've been one or not, because I just don't really know. I've told plenty of people I don't really understand or know in what context that is or what that means. I try to be a good person, and I try to help people that ask me for help. And I mean, that's all I can do. And it's because that's something that I'm good at. There will be sword knights that aren't good at teaching, and that's okay. I don't think that's a problem, and I don't think that they should be held to some standard just because I happen to be good at teaching and did a lot of teaching, that they should be held to some standard to match the output that I had, or even come close to matching the output that I've had, or Anatole, who is a teacher by profession.
Right.
So is clearly good at teaching, right? Like, you can't hold them up as the standard. Like, if you're going to be a sword knight, you need to be this. I don't think that's fair. But I do love teaching. And I mean, you can ask me questions at 1, 2 in the morning, and we might get into very long discussions. This happens with a lot of people, that they're like, "Hey, I saw this shot, and I've been, I saw this shot on your video, and I've been thinking about this," and it'll turn into an hour and a half long discussion that we started at like 1 in the morning, because I don't sleep that much, right? Yeah. Because I just love to help people. But again, to close that thought out and to emphasize it one more time for all the people out there trying to make knighthood harder for people, I don't think that that's a good idea, and I don't think they should be held to a standard because it's something that I did.
So to kind of go off of the idea of teaching at any time, the original, I think it's Advanced Sword and Board video in like 2005, 6, something like that, right? What drove you guys to make that video? Like, was it like people trying to get you to show things to other people, or was it like, nah, whatever, we'll just drink a beer and go outside and videotape what we do, or something like that,
It was SKBC1. And after SKBC 1, this kind of spirit of kinship happened. Because before that, no one would teach you anything.
Mm-hmm.
We were very insular with our techniques, with our quote unquote secrets. If you're been in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for any period of time, you probably know the concept of Criante. And so there was a little bit of that Criante business going around, and you're like, we weren't going to teach anyone anything, right? And SKBC 1 kind of put it out there that, hey, a rising tide floats all boats, right? So if we start helping everybody get better, then we're going to get better as a side effect of that, or as a direct effect of that, even maybe not even a side effect, right? And I know that Guy, who's also a Torch now, or a member of the Chosen, right? He has said multiple times that was one of his big reasons for wanting to start something like SKBC, and for starting SKBC was because they wanted people to get better so that they would have more challenges and better people to fight, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I heard Michael Hammer of God in a conversation I had with him when I was a much younger amp guarder put it to me like this one time. He said, if you don't have talented young fighters in your kingdom, people that are coming up or good like mid-talent fighters, it's your fault because you haven't done enough to train them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the video. So I didn't get to answer the video question yet. And so Harry saw that, and he really wanted to make a video to help people, which since he's kind of complained about the making of that video, but we'll get to that in a minute. And so we went out into the backyard and we taught the things that we like to do, the things that he was good at, the things that I was good at. He went to Dalos as well and filmed some segments with people. There's some band people on there, so I guess I won't talk about them because they're banned, but there were other people as well in the video, and Zig, may he rest in peace, he was in the video. We, and really it was Harry was the driving force behind it. He did that just out of a desire to want to help people. Now his complaint about it now is when he goes to SKBC and has to teach, he's like, well, they've all seen the video. He's like, they've already seen this. And I'm like, Harry, surely you've changed things in 20 something years since we did that video, bro. But
why update if they're still not able to block it? Why update?
Yeah, that is a very hairy concept, by the way.
I have stolen a lot of what I have from ideology wise, at least from Arthon over the years, from the short conversations I've gotten to have with him. So I want to kind of do a recap of some of the things that we've talked about here, because I want to move into something new with you here in just a moment. We have been discussing people that are interested in upping their fighting. I kept using the example of you've only been in a year and a half, but you could have been in 10 years and you're just now deciding to up your game. That you should try out several different lengths of sword and find what is going to be comfortable for you. Work on your footwork and start early on your footwork. That it doesn't have to be anything grand. It can be small things, working on keeping your distance, working on keeping them at distance, working on creating small angles, and seeing how that footwork affects some of the shots that you like to throw. Don't always look at it as, I need to learn this new shot, or I've heard it said, I'm going to be a 3-shot knight or something like that. These are my 3 shots that I do really well. You don't have to look at it as, I have 3 shots. You can look at it as, I want a solution to these threat situations. I want a shot or set of shots that are going to be threats to a hip or to a shoulder or to a stab or something like that. And that, I think, puts a better, that's something that I hadn't really thought about before this conversation, something that I think puts a better spin on it, because one single shot, pun intended, because one single shot doesn't necessarily answer the question all of the time. it's not a universal solution. And having a set of threat ranges for a particular area that you'd like to throw to gives you a better mental perspective on what you're trying to accomplish. And we talked a little bit about why we travel and regional fighting styles and the fact that it's going to be a little different everywhere you go, and that the thing that you're trying to get out of your travel is really how you do against those particular people. Where are they killing you? Talk about it with your friends on the car ride home. If you went alone, call a friend, because being able to shop talk stuff like that is going to help it sink in. And where were you killing them? Where do you think that you were doing well against whoever you were going up against? So these are the big things that you're trying to get out of your travel. What I wanted to kind of shift gears to is one of your classes that I took at SKBC. And this is moving from a very directly combat-oriented, self-oriented thing to more of a reflection piece and a pedagogy piece. Because you teach some classes where you look at video and you are analyzing what people are doing and the movements that they're making. And you're walking through with the class and saying, okay, guys, let's pause the video for just a moment and talk about what we just now saw. And this is something that the triads have done many times, and the guys up in Knoxville have done many times. But it's a really useful piece of the puzzle, especially right now where we're not able to get out and fight as much, that you can sit down, even better if you have a friend or group of friends to sit down with, and look at some of the best fighters in our game. Pull up a random tournament somewhere. It doesn't really matter the skill level of the people that you're watching for this. It's your ability to look and read the situation. Talk to me a little bit about that class and the inspiration for it. And if newer people wanted to sit down and do something like that, what would be most useful for them?
Okay, sure. So inspiration-wise, I think that class was called Combat Computer. I think I did it as part of a Combat Computer class. If not, I did it as an Analyzing Opponent class. I don't remember what I call that. Like I said, I've taught every year for a long time now. So,
Combat Computer.
And I used to teach every segment. So I taught a lot of classes. But I would say that boxing and MMA was my motivation for that, because they do a lot of film study on people. And even football and basketball, right? They do a lot of film study on their opponents to understand their tendencies, to get an idea of what that person's going to do. And, there's only so much, there are only so many things that could happen in a fight, right? There's only so many variances that someone could put on it. There's very few things that are just going to be brand new to you after a while of you being in the game, right? So as you learn to read and you learn to understand situationally what's likely to happen, then you will you'll react to it almost even before it happens. I mean, people tell me all the time, man, you are so fast. And I don't really feel like I'm super fast. I just feel like I have an understanding of what's going to happen, a deep understanding of what's going to happen. And so I can react to things kind of ahead of when they're happening, and gain some advantage from that. And so I think that was my motivation for that. And as far as where people can start, my Squire, one of my Squires, Morpheus, and I have volunteered our time. And the reason I'm volunteering my time is to help him learn this skill. And he has the skill for video review. He is learning the skill of teaching through video review with me. And so if you're interested in having a video review session, then you hit Morpheus up on Facebook and you set up a time, and me and him, or he and I, will get together with you, send us a video, and we will do a video review session with you and teach you how to look for the things that we're looking for, give you ideas on how to improve your fighting, and teach you kind of how to read situations to some extent in that session. It usually takes about an hour, depending on how long of a video you send us, but usually we try to hold it to an hour. So if you want a good place to start, I think that's a great place to start, because I'm teaching him. I can't be too much longer for this game. I'm very old now, but so I need to pass the wisdom on, right, so that he can help do that as well. And if other people learn in the course, then that's all the better. So I think that's a great place to start for the reading skill and the video review skill.
Yeah, and I'll actually toss out to the people of Winter's Edge here, if you do choose to take that up, instead of just contacting a single people, because that could be a little bit of an overload, get parks or groups together, learn together. If you have other people that are interested in fighting, even if they're not at your park, contact them and see if it would be something that they would really enjoy doing. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
It's
we
interesting.
haven't done something, but we would do that with the bigger group. And we use I have a GoToMeeting license, but we use GoToMeeting. We could use Zoom as well, right? So we can have up to 100 or 200 people in a meeting session at a time, so we're not limited. So, I'm doing as much as I can. And don't get me wrong, like he's already a very talented teacher. He's been running a weekly fighter practice up until the Rona, and teaching people, and he's going to do it his own way. I'm not going to say he's going to do it exactly like me, but he is learning things from me and concepts from me about teaching that he's carrying forward. I would say that other people have done that as well. Sunshine, who's also a member of the Chosen and a Sword Knight warlord now here in the CK. He's been doing similar stuff, and he learned some from me as well in the teaching space, and he's kind of made it his own and taken it out there too. So there's resources out there for that next generation as us old dogs get older and older, right? But yeah, definitely hit us up, man. We would certainly be willing to help out in that capacity. I think Anatole does like a weekly thing for Dragon Spine as well. This is more of a teaching thing and not a video review thing.
Yeah, that's his dojo.
Yeah.
He does a specific dojo for Dragon Spine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I think didn't they make that open to anybody? If you wanted to come check it out, you could, or is it only for Dragon Spine?
I think that during the pandemic stuff that it was open. I don't know if the intent is that it will remain open, but I think that for a while there it was, yeah.
It's publicly on their Facebook, so if I'm not supposed to be seeing it, sorry guys.
No, and knowing Anatole, I think that he would want it to be open. It's something that he did for his local area. Mm-hmm. It's something that I did for him, right? It's something that I did for Shion. It's something that I did for Morpheus, for Sunshine. For all the people that were in the 512 dojo, reach out and help them, even though they weren't in my company, some of them at the time. So the fact that he's paying that forward, I think is awesome. And obviously I think Isaac and I are pretty good friends. So I think that he's awesome to begin with, but I'm happy that he's doing something like that, because I did a lot in the beginning of the Rona, and then I haven't really done a ton lately because I've been dealing with some personal things, but I'm happy that people are out there doing it. Glenn does some regular stuff as well. I think that Adam and Brett have been doing some things. Mm-hmm. So the resources continue to be out there. And I like that because it doesn't make me feel as pressured to put stuff out, because I know that there's resources available out there for that other people are kind of, doing it as well. So,
yeah. And we'll link to some of those again in the show notes. We're at a point where we typically transition to story time. I emphasize that, very weird.
You did.
So what we typically do at this point, we're at kind of a winding down portion, but we always ask our guests, do you have a favorite moment, a favorite story? It can be funny, it can be epic, it can be, I was going to say tragic, but maybe not. Some story that really stands out to you in Amthgard.
And while you're thinking, I want to share one. I have one. I have one to share. I have two to share, actually. So the first one is when I first learned that you guys were doing the YouTube group, and I was talking to Sir Gillen about it, and he and I, you need to go watch this. This is really good stuff. I thought, yeah, this sounds right up my alley. I like analyzing things like this, and so I go to YouTube. I learned that Grind Nation and One Grind Nation are not the same thing. No. And that after watching for about an hour, I figured out that they were not playing Amthgard. Be sure that you go to the correct YouTube group if you're looking for Amthgard stuff. And the other thing that I wanted to tell was just a really quick funny story about when we had finally met you guys a couple of times, and Banner Wars, which is an old event, I don't think it takes place anymore now, but old event that used to happen where companies would get together and do different things. You guys, this was ESAM era. Sir Gillen, just Gillen at the time, or Tennessee at the time, got into the Golden City All-Stars, and he got his number. I don't know if he ever actually got a jersey, but he got his number. And I remember many years later talking to you and Harry about it at an event. You and Arth on it. I said, hey, I'd really like to join the Golden City All-Stars. And you say, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that our third guy would do it. I think that, they've said no about you. And I said, Dalos, Lorik is at our park now. I see him at every event. Oh, that's too bad then. He didn't tell you no to your face. So two funny stories there. Do you have a story that has become the legendary among the Bobs or something like that? One of the funny ones that you guys just retell over and over again. And I do ask, after having to edit some of the early episodes, that the statute of limitation be reached on it.
We wouldn't have any of those stories anyway, but as far as statute of limitations, but yeah. We have a ton of stories that get told over and over and over again, that we've kind of been a part of. The 10th year of clans, the big one that we talk about a lot, especially that I talk about a lot. I've written about it pretty extensively. The 10th year of clan, people claim 1,000. I don't know if that number is accurate or not, but you have to remember back in those days too, there wasn't a ton of things to do like there is now at events, outside of fighting and maybe a little bit of ANS and a bardic at night. So there's drinking and hanging out and ditching. And so the ditches were way more massive back then. So we had a multi-100 person ditch. And I was fighting on the far right with Harry and Joe, Draknar and Arthon, and turned the corner, and I'm just running backs because we have always been team fighters to the extent that we'll turn a flank and then we're going to backstab everyone. And if you aren't handling your flanks, like whining about backstabbing, you should handle your flanks and you should watch your back. Like it's combat simulation, right?
Right.
So turn the corner and, it's huge, make it all the way down the line. And I was young then. 10th year was just a long time ago. Make it all the way down the line. And even then in the mountains of New Mexico, made it all the way down the line, stabbed all the backs that I could, looked all the way back down at all the angry people turned facing me because I had backstabbed all of them, and then took this huge breath, and I was like, oh crap, now I got to walk all the way back before they play on. And I didn't have the breath because of the sprint down the line, like it was just a crazy, kind of going through that. But we have a lot of crazy recent stories from clan as well. Just other events that we've gone to. I think the important thing is really in this game, and especially in this modern era of we're really trying to find our balance. And by that, I mean that the game as a whole is trying to find its balance in regards to very important social issues. And it's a pendulum swing that's needed to happen for a very long time. And we have begun to start to try to improve and to try to grow in that area and to socially be a better organization. With any growing, there's pain. You just don't grow without some amount of pain. And so we're experiencing some of that right now, in various manifestations, right? And so what I would say is important is, you're going to find your group of friends and you're gonna lean on them, and you're gonna go experience things with them, and you're gonna have fun with them, and the game is gonna be fun. At the same time, try to remember, and we weren't always great at this, so it's not like I'm preaching to you from like a station where I'm like, oh, we always did this. I mean, there were probably times that we were pretty bad at it, right? But in fact, there were times that we were pretty bad at it. But try to remember that people are there to have fun, and you want to try to take care of them, because in the end, the best thing for the game is to have more people, more good people, right? Mm-hmm. That want to get out there and swing foam, want to get out there and, do ANS, want to get out there and reeve, want to get out there and serve the game, right? Like, we want to have more people out there, the better. So just try to work with people, understand where they're coming from, and if they need assistance becoming a better version of themselves, then help them become a better version of themselves in a meaningful and productive way. Try to save the huge hardcore correction, right? Like, you're a this, you're a that. First try to, and there's some people that aren't going to get better. They're just bad people. I think that those do exist, but I think it's less than people think. So I always try to work with people and help them to become a better version of themselves. One, because it's something that my dad taught me for a very long time. Always leave a place or a person better than when you found it. Mm-hmm. Right. And the way that you do that is by digging in and just help. It's one of the reasons I wanted to be a teacher, right? I use the long suits that I have to help someone. And I have seen people become better versions of themselves through foam fighting. I've seen them gain confidence to become better at their real life jobs because they became better at foam fighting, because they realized, if I put effort into something, it makes a difference. If I practice at something, it makes a difference. If I work on my craft, it makes a difference, right? And they take that into whatever, and they get better at that as well. And so if we as a society would work more towards that kind of education and that kind of assistance and that kind of even correction, I think that we would be far better off than if we, use some of the other methods sometimes. And again, I understand it's a pendulum swing, right? We were very much in a bad space for many years. And so now I think it's great that we're looking out for people, and, we need to help people come along and become better versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my...
Sir Michael had said early Amtgard had a bit of I think he said the prison yard to it. And I can, I probably came in near the end of that, but I do remember some of it. And I do think it's coming the other way.
Yeah. I think that that's a great place to end it there. I think that was very well said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for coming on, Sir Dalos. Thank you again to everybody else here. You didn't get to say hi, but Vidalia's here as well.
Said hi very early on when we were setting up, but there was a bit of a...
Yep, hi again.
So thanks so much for coming on, Lucas, or pre-recorded Cabbage. Do you want to roll us out?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.